laughing at problems to find a new dream. If the oldest didn't come true, work hard to achieve your goals, and in all circumstances to stay positive. This is what makes our program's hero who he is. Meet the first Secretary and Press Attaché of the U.S. Embassy in Astana, David Gamble.
Uncontrollable things happen. Like I said, half of my family is from Ireland, so the immediate thing we do is we laugh and we say, well, this is ridiculous, and then we, once we finish laughing about how silly the situation is, then we sit down and say, okay, how could we work through this, and how can you find a positive outcome? So I was born in Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C., near the Chesapeake Bay, which is a big body of water there. I grew up around the Washington, D.C. area. Also lived in New York, Texas, North Carolina. So I've lived in many places, in the United States. Growing up, my father was a police officer, and my mother worked in a bank. She worked at McDonald's for a little while. She cleaned houses. She's done many jobs, and I think from both my mother and my father, I really have learned the value of hard work, and that the situations in life may change, but you can progress with those situations. And so, my father, who was the police officer, he always worked for the federal government, but was transferred around the country, and we would move. And I learned early on that, moving to a new location, was saying goodbye to your friends, but meeting new friends, and how to stay in touch and in contact with your old friends. And I think that later, helped me a lot. And in the current lifestyle I lead, where I move all around the world. But mostly, from my parents, I learned to be very positive.
David Gamble cannot live his life in a different way. He did not fall into despair. He did not fall in despair when he meets with difficulties. He is not concerned too much if suddenly something goes out of control. In any way, he never loses his heart. He just takes time out to think in order to make the right decision.
Growing up as a child, all I wanted was to be a pilot. And when I was 16 years old, I found out that I had bad eyes, and I wasn't going to be a pilot. After university, I joined the Army. And if I couldn't fly the plane, the next best thing was to be a paratrooper, a descendant. And so I was an officer in the paratroopers for 5 years. I served in Korea. I went to war in Afghanistan. And while I was in Afghanistan, I was interacting with people from Afghanistan, and I said, wow, this is, I really enjoy this. I enjoy, working with people from other countries. And about that time, I met my first American diplomat. I never had any reason to encounter a diplomat, and began talking to them about what it is they do. And they said to me, Chip, I can see that you really, enjoy this. Why don't you apply to become a diplomat? And so in America, at the time, we had this big test that was offered twice a year in the Foreign Service exam, and I took the exam and I went through the process, and I became a diplomat. And so it's been a very exciting experience, something I would have never imagined doing when I was growing up.
David Gamble have worked long enough in the diplomatic sphere, visited different countries, met with a lot of people, but every day he starts to perform its mission as if for the first time, with the same enthusiasm, but with a more professional approach.
I started in Poland, I went to the Philippines, then I served in Moscow, and I served here. And one of the things I'm very proud of, when I was in Moscow, I was responsible for nuclear arms treaties and for helping to reduce the amount of nuclear weapons. I was responsible for counterterrorism and all these agreements that we have between our countries. to fight terrorism, to fight cyber criminals, and worked on a lot of really exciting issues to make the world a better place. And I knew, kind of when I reached that point in my career that I made the right decision, that I had the potential to help make the world a better place in very concrete ways. And so I was really excited to, I followed my boss from Moscow down here to Kazakhstan and took on the role of being the official spokesperson for the embassy. And, exciting to explain America, because that's really what I do most of the day, is explain what it is about America. How do you explain something like watching our wild and free elections that we have going on right now, and it's fun to do that both to the press, but also in private conversations, because people have a lot of very real questions about why America does things the way we do, and I really enjoy that. It's a very rewarding job to explain America. The political dialogue between the United States and Kazakhstan is really functioning at a high level. As you know, the United States was the first embassy to set up here in Kazakhstan, and our relationship has just grown since then. Matter of fact, this year we're celebrating 25 years of relations between our countries. And if you start from the very beginning, it was unclear whether Kazakhstan would remain an independent, successful country. No one knew what would happen after the breakup of the Soviet Union. And what we've seen is Kazakhstan really emerge as a leader in the region with a successful economy. And largely this is due to some bets that Kazakhstan made early on. At a time when Kazakhstan could least afford it, it made some very courageous decisions, giving up its nuclear arsenal, investing heavily in education, the Bolshoi program, we're seeing the results of that now. And then lastly, the oil and gas sector, bringing in, foreign companies, especially American companies. And, someone once said that, Kazakhstan bet the future of its country on Chevron, and Chevron bet the future of its company on Kazakhstan. And this is something that's really worked out well. So that's the beginning. And as we walk forward through the years, we've seen really strong cooperation on nuclear non-proliferation. Now Kazakhstan is setting up a laboratory to fight against biological threats, either from terrorism or just from natural diseases. And this is the kind of deep relationship that has evolved over the years. But it goes beyond security, which is where it all started. Now we see deep cooperation in education and in culture.
Kazakhstan has an effective multi-vector foreign policy and is interested in maintaining diplomatic relations with all countries. The US is an important part of this process and a strategic partner of our country, which cannot fail to please the American diplomat. As noted in an interview with David Gamble, Kazakhstan and the United States seek to develop bilateral relations in many fields. Close cooperation between the two countries are significant, both in relations on international issues and in terms of domestic policy, such as improving the competitiveness of Kazakhstan's economy.
We see Kazakhstani experts going to the United States, experts coming here, and we're broadening into many new spheres of business, whether it be franchises. We saw McDonald's is the latest franchise to open this year, and these kind of long-term projects can only happen where there's a deep understanding, trust, and where both sides are confident that the relationship can build. And this gives us the basis for the higher level discussions that we're seeing now. And most notably, you're seeing we have the C5+1, which is where the 5 Central Asian countries and the United States now have an ongoing dialogue, trying to address some really difficult issues, water, environment, societal development. These are really long-standing issues, and that can only happen, in dialogue at high levels. But after that initial trust has been built. And so over the 25 years, we've seen that trust built, and now we're moving into these really really complicated topics. And just it's been less than a week since Kazakhstan received its seat on the Security Council, and this really just goes to show you where Kazakhstan has come as a nation, and the amount of relationships and the amount of high dialogue that has occurred over this 25-year period between our nations and between many nations through Kazakhstan's multi-vector foreign policy. Now Kazakhstan is not there yet, right? But Kazakhstan acceded to the WTO and had to make a lot of changes to get ready for that. Kazakhstan now is working on acceding to the OECD, and you can't negotiate your way into the OECD. You either meet all the chapters or you don't. And so, this is the kind of thing that's good for Kazakhstan, and Kazakhstan's, dreams of aspiring, to meet the standards, required to lift the economy up to the top 30. Kazakhstan was chair of the OSCE, a few years back. Kazakhstan played a very critical role in achieving the historic agreement with Iran on its nuclear program, by being a host, by doing quiet diplomacy, behind closed doors. And so Kazakhstan, has this potential to be an incredible, peacemaker. It's standing up a peacekeeping battalion, and looking to work with the UN on peacekeeping operations. These are responsibilities and worldwide responsibilities that Kazakhstan is aspiring to. Eventually, some of its neighbors, may aspire to some of these too. But Kazakhstan has been doing this for a while, and I think that's something that makes Kazakhstan unique and admirable.
Cooperation between the US and Kazakhstan over the years rose to the highest level of trust and effective cooperation, said David Gamble. Successfully developing relations in the energy sector, trade, investment, new technologies, and not least in the field of education.
There are many spheres of cooperation between the United States and Kazakhstan. Education, is a huge one. If you look at Nazarbayev University, most of the programs there at Nazarbayev University are partnered with U.S. universities. So you have many Kazakhstani students going to study in the United States. You have many professors from the United States working here in Kazakhstan. Now, I would like to see more American students, come here to Kazakhstan. And I think as some of these programs are now maturing, and they begin to get, regional accreditation, I think you're going to see, students come here, because this is an exciting country, and there's a lot, for students to gain from Kazakhstanis. Now, in other areas, you mentioned healthcare.
When there is a common goal and the desire, you can achieve any result, David Gamble is sure. Kazakhstan, according to the American diplomat, highlighted the ability to build a competent architecture of international relations, which is based primarily on the understanding.
And of course, these don't line up, because in any negotiation, everyone is trying to get the best deal possible. And ideally, you get to a situation where both sides win. And that doesn't always happen, but ideally it does. But of course, there's going to be frustrations. And of course, you can be in a situation where everybody in the room thinks they've come up with a good solution, right? And then you each call back to your capitals, and the capitals don't like it. And so then you have to come back to the room. And sometimes this can actually be a bonding experience with the people that you're negotiating with, because both of you are sitting there and say, we had a solution, but they didn't like it. And so you have to come back and try a new approach. And so the most importance is patience, and to not take things personally, because both of you have your instructions, and both of you are official representatives of your governments and of your people. And so, it's not necessarily that person across from you giving their personal views. You both have your instructions, and you have to just act professionally, be patient, and be understanding. But then, look for solutions, because it's easy to get stuck and say, this is where as good as we can get, and you'd say, okay, that's good, but where can we work?